Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to You're Doing It Wrong, 13 WordPress mistakes to avoid. I'm really excited to share this with you today because I spend a lot of time using WordPress. I spend a lot of time teaching people WordPress, and these are the things that I see almost every time that someone's like, oh, can you log into my website and take a look or help me out? Or if I'm starting a project with somebody that already has a WordPress site, like these are the common mistakes that I see on almost every site that I log into. And so I thought it'd be a great webinar to go through and talk about how we can fix these things. I also want to let you know that I am recording this. You will get a copy of this, plus this, all the slides, everything that's on this on the screen. You will get a recording of. That will be sent to you later this afternoon for me, my time, and it will come into your inbox, in a few hours from now. I want to let you know too that just a little bit about me. I am from Dayton, Ohio. I'm heavily involved with WordPress. I do several different things under the umbrella of WordPress. The first thing is I'm a developer. I have a website over at hartzlerdm.com where I do all of my development work. I work with small businesses and individuals, create that online website that they really need to build their brand and their business. I'm also a podcaster. You probably heard of me from yourwebsiteengineer.com, or I'm a podcaster there. And so I have free hundreds, I guess there's 140 some episodes of WordPress information that I just put out on a weekly basis. And it just really focuses on a specific thing each week to just help you improve your website or add a new feature, new functionality, or just understand some of the concepts of WordPress itself. And lastly, I'm an instructor. I've created this new thing called conqueryourwebsite.com. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation here. But I've also taught an advanced level developer class that takes people from beyond just a regular WordPress user to an actual person who can develop a theme and build plugins and things like that. So I know a lot about WordPress. I've spent the last probably 4.5, 5 years just really diving in and learning WordPress, how it works, and how it can best help you in your business or your personal brand or whatever you may be using it for. One last thing I want to share before we get started is if you go on over to dustinislive.com, that will pre-populate a tweet so that you can send out and you can just let other people know in your community that you are hanging out and you're learning about the WordPress mistakes that you're trying to avoid. And it'll give a link too so people can go and sign up if they're available at this exact time. So dustinislive.com. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? The game plan is very simple. We're going to talk about the most common mistakes, and I've got 13 of them that I want to share with you today. And then it wouldn't be a very good webinar if I just told you all of these mistakes. So I'm actually going to go through and share with you the solutions to these mistakes. And some of them will be very simple, like install this, do that. Other ones are going to be a little bit more complex. And so we'll go through the mistake first and then the solution to that said mistake. And then, of course, what would a webinar be if there wasn't some sort of special offer at the end? It's a no say, it's not going to be a high, I don't know how to say this. I'm not going to force you into buying anything, but I do want to let you know something cool that I do have available if you're interested at the end of the webinar. So my goal with this entire webinar is to shortcut your way to successfully using WordPress. I want to take out some of that time and the effort and that energy that a lot of people spend trying to figure out what to do with WordPress. WordPress is usually it's simple, it's fairly intuitive, and it's easy to get up and running. But I haven't found a great resource where all of the information that you need is in one place. You have to go to a specific plugin to find that information. You have to go to their website. You have to go to sign up for another service to do this or that, the other. So my goal is to try to shortcut your way to successfully using WordPress, and we're going to start that right now. So mistake number 0, and this isn't really necessarily one of the 13. This is one that I wanted to make sure that I cleared up before we got started. But mistake number 0 is using the wrong type of WordPress. There's actually 2 different styles of WordPress there, and how that works is there's WordPress.com and there's WordPress.org. So WordPress.com, and you can use either one of these. The back end, the dashboard area looks very, very similar, but how it really works is WordPress.com is completely free. They do all the hosting, they do all the updates, they keep everything managed and ready to go for you. WordPress.org is something that is very highly customizable. You have to install it on a server, and you have to do all of the updates, keep everything yourself, making sure that you've got everything updated and installed and things like that. So WordPress.com, you'll know that if you have one or the other, if you go to WordPress.com to log in, you have a free WordPress.com account. If you have to, if you've purchased hosting, you've paid a little bit for your WordPress site, then you have a self-hosted WordPress site. And this presentation will focus mainly on self-hosted WordPress, which isn't a bad thing necessarily if you are a free user, but it gives you the ability to we're just going to talk through the different things that we can do with our own self-hosted version. So if you're a WordPress.com user, still stick in, and I'm sure they'll learn something, but this is primarily for WordPress.org visitors. And yes, there is the people can still sign up and come to the webinar presentation if you use the click to tweet or the dustinislive.com. So you want to make sure if you're doing that, people can still sign up and log in as we're going through the presentation. Okay, mistake number one is not removing all of the initial settings. And when you log into WordPress, in the dashboard area, on the left-hand side is all of the navigation bar. So you can go to your posts, your pages, you can look at your media, you can do all of these different things. And the very bottom one on a base install of WordPress is called settings. And then the settings expands into like 4 or 5 sub-settings. And in these general settings, the big 3 in the general settings that need to be changed are site title, tagline, and time zone. And so the site title, you want to put whatever the name of your website is, maybe your brand name, something along those lines. And then you also want to change that tagline. You don't want it to say just another 2012, 2013 theme. You want to make sure that you are actually telling people what it is that you're doing here. So like for me, I would put site title as your website engineer. And then in the tagline, I might put helping you create a high quality website, or my goal is to inspire you to do amazing things online, or whatever that is. That's just basically making sure that your default install is not, it's not default, I guess. There's people out there, there's hackers, there's spammers that will go and they will look for those generic taglines, like just another 2012 theme, and then they'll start targeting those because they think that it hasn't been properly set up and locked down and secure because they still have some of these initial settings set up. Another thing that you want to do is you want to go to the time zone box. You want to change that to your current time zone. So whatever time zone that you're in, that box is probably the most annoying thing in WordPress. When you expand it, it will open up and there'll be like 3,000 line items in there, and they're organized by continent. So you'd have to go in and find exactly the continent and then the city that's closest to you, or the city that follows the same time zone guidelines as you do. So for me, I always go in and I put New York because New York follows the same daylight savings time as they do in Ohio. And what this is made for is if you want to schedule your posts, you can schedule them to go out at 4 a.m. or 7 a.m. And if you don't change this UTC time, it's going to go out at that time, which is 4 hours, 10 hours, different than what your time zone is. And then your posts and your pages will go out at these random times. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. Mistake number one, continuing, is also not setting up permalinks. And so permalinks is still under the settings area where it's all the way at the bottom. So you click on settings and then go to permalinks. And we want to make sure that we're using the 4th down option or the 5th down option called post name. And how this works is it basically makes your URLs easier to say, that makes them easier to search. And so basically what happens is your website would be like yourwebsiteengineer.com/about would be your about page, or about or /contact would be your contact page. It's much easier to tell people to go to, hey, yourwebsiteengineer.com/contact, and you get all my details. Or I could say, go to yourwebsiteengineer.com/P=12974. Like, that's really hard for somebody to remember. It's just annoying. And with the default settings, Google has no idea what's on that page. If at least you're using the post name, you have the ability, you've got the post name in your URL. So Google has a little bit of an idea what is on those pages. So how you can fix these, this one is very simple. We want to customize our title and our tagline. We want to enable post name permalinks, which is pretty simple. And we want to make sure that we set our time zone to be the proper time zone and that we've got, we're in the right time zone. So that one's really, really easy. Mistake number 2 that I see all of the time is there is absolutely no backup system set up in place. I just logged into a site that usually gets, thousands of visitors per week, 5,000, 10,000 visitors per week to this site, and they had no backup running whatsoever. And I was like, wow, you have so much content, you have so many comments, you have all of these things, and if something happens, it could be completely gone in an instant. So backups are really good because they give you the ability to roll back if your site ever gets hacked. So if you get someone to come in and it actually hacks your site, you can roll back to a previous version without all the malicious code in it. You also have a great restore point if an update crashes your site. Sometimes when you load a new plugin or you load a new, the new version of WordPress, it might break something, and it makes it very, very simple to just roll back and get the previous version, and then you can begin troubleshooting what might have happened. So that's why that's another good reason. And you're not going to lose years worth of content if your server crashes. Just think how much time and effort you've invested into your website. If you have 100 posts and each one of them you want out each week or whatever, like you've got hundreds of hours worth of content built up, and if a server crashes, something gets injected into your database and just wipes everything out, it's all gone and you have to start completely over. So that is that's a great thing that we need to be doing. So you need to set up a backup. So how to fix this? You can install a plugin, and I know that I've mentioned a plugin a couple times already. If you're brand new to WordPress, a plugin is basically a little snippet of code. They're kind of bundled and they're called plugins, but it's like a module that you can add to your WordPress install to give you extra functionality. So instead of going out and hiring a website developer to build you a backup plugin from scratch, which may cost $1,000 to do that, we can go and we can find plugins that are relatively cheap if you want to purchase a premium one, or a lot of times you can find a free one online. So what we want to do is we want to install a plugin. And two that I highly recommend, Backup Buddy is a premium one. They have great support. They have teams of people that are always adding new features. Or you can use something like BackWP Up. It's going to do the exact same thing. You don't have quite as many options with BackWP Up, but it is a free plugin that you can go and check out. And if you're interested in looking up any of these plugins that I talk about here, when I say a plugin name, if you just Google WordPress and then the name of the plugin that I say, it's going to pull up the WordPress.org repository, and you'll be able to easily find that plugin. So once you've installed it, you want to configure it. One of the things that you have to take in consideration is it will take space to back up your website regularly. So we want to make sure that we're not, doing it too often. You don't need to back up your entire site every single day, but I do recommend backing up your database at least on a weekly basis, and then backing up all of the files on your server about once a month or so. That's probably the easiest way. That way you're not getting overwhelmed with too much data on your server that's really not usable unless you have a problem or you need to roll back. And then the last thing is you forget about it. Once you have it set up, you set it up so it automatically goes off at 3 a.m. or sometime in the middle of the night, and it's going to automatically back everything up. And then from there, once it's backed up, it automatically it does it. You can send it an email to yourself so that so you know whether there's a problem or not, or you can just go ahead and just check it every once in a while. Every time that you log into WordPress, you can see when the latest backup was. So that's really, really powerful. I see there are some questions rolling in. Keep them coming. We'll get to those right at the very end. The way that GoToMeeting and Keynote work together is I have to quit the entire presentation so that I can answer questions. It's really kind of bizarre. So we'll just kind of keep on moving. We're going to go to mistake number 3 is not using Better WP Security. Now, this is a plugin that I mentioned at a recent WordCamp. I did a very similar talk like this at a WordCamp, and of the 45, 50 people that were in the room, I would say like 3 people were using the plugin Better WP Security. And you can see here, this is just a screenshot from the plugin itself, but there's 21 different things that this plugin does to make sure that your WordPress site is secure, and it's hard for hackers to get in. It's hard for people to guess your passwords, all of these different things. And what you do is you install this plugin, and then you work through these 21 different things. So the very first item here, it says, I'm not enforcing strong passwords. Click here to fix. So you click there, and then it walks you through the process of making sure that you're enforcing strong passwords on every user account. And then the next one, your WordPress header is showing too much information. Click here to fix. You can go in and you can make sure that you have changed that information. You can hide that information so people can't see that you're using WordPress. One of the really powerful things too on this plugin is you have the ability to limit your login attempts. It's built right into this plugin, and how it works is you can say that if somebody tries to use a username and password more than 3 times, time out and don't let anybody log into the site for 5 minutes. Or you can set you can set it to whatever time or however many logins that you want so that nobody can brute force attack your website. The brute force means that somebody can just goes in and they're just constantly trying new usernames and passwords. I wish that was built into WordPress, but it's not. So the next best thing is using better WP security. It's free. It's in the WordPress repository. And I interviewed the guy. I talked to the guy on a previous episode of Your Website Engineer podcast, and he's got over 1 million downloads of a plugin. That is a huge number, and only some of the biggest name plugins and some of the ones that we'll talk about today have that many downloads. So it's a very, very successful plugin. Works really well, and it's just awesome. So the fix: install better WP security. We want to go and configure all 21 items, and we also want to make sure that we are enabled the limit login feature. So that was the one I was talking about, to make sure that people can't log in, you know, and brute force attack. Another really cool thing that you can do is you can limit where people log in from. So if you are, you know, that you're always going to be in Ohio or something along those lines, you can restrict all other countries in the world. You can restrict at different times. So like, I know that I'm usually never awake between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. Like, I'm usually never awake and never working on my website then. So I can enable that time to be locked down so that nobody can ever get in during that time. Now, of course, if I ever need that, that's kind of a pain, but it's a great feature to have built in, especially if you're traveling or different things. Like, you know that you're not going to be working on it for a while. You want to make sure that you remove the ability for people to log in. It's just going to save you so much time and energy, and restoring a website from a hack is a complete and utter pain. So we want to make sure that we're trying not to do that. The next mistake number 4, is not tracking traffic from day one. So I see this all the time too. They'll come to me and they're like, is there any way that we can see who's been looking at our site? And unless you set this up right at the very beginning, there isn't a way. Like, you have to do it at the beginning. Otherwise, you'll forget about it. I know that I do a lot, so this is why it's on my checklist for doing it very regularly as I get started. But you can sign up for a free Google Analytics account over at google.com/analytics, or you can use a plugin within WordPress called Jetpack. But in order to use the Jetpack plugin, you have to sign up for a WordPress.com account. And that actually, the Jetpack plugin will actually run within WordPress itself, and it will run all of your stats inside of your dashboard. So you can see exactly who has come to your website, and you don't get a lot of data using Jetpack. Google Analytics will give you so much more. They'll tell you what type of web browser they're using, what operating system, if they're using a mobile phone or not. They give you so much more detail. But either one of these, we got to make sure that we're installing these and using them right away. If you have a site right now, you want to install it immediately. Like, what I've heard one time is when is the best time to plant a tree? And the answer to that is 20 years ago would be the best time to plant a tree, because, you know, you have nice big shade, you can climb the tree, things like that. But when is the next best time is today. So if you get nothing else out of this webinar other than installing better WP security, you want to go ahead and start tracking traffic to your website. And then the last thing is, you want to do this early, and you want to verify it's working. And so one thing else I see, that they'll go in and add the code that they need, install the plugin, do what they need, and then they'll never check to make sure that things are working properly. You know, they'll come to me a year later like, okay, I'm ready. Let's look at the stats. We installed it, and nobody verified it. When Google Analytics gets set up, when you first connect it to your Google Analytics account, it's going to take at least a day or two before it starts recognizing and actually displaying data for you. So you want to make sure that, you know, in a week or so, you want to go back and check. And if you're going to your site, you know, you're updating it, you're looking at it, they're going to register those views with those 2 plugins. So that's really, really cool. So your fix, it's going to be simple. Go and sign up for an account either at WordPress.com or Google.com/analytics. And then there's plugins that you can use for either one of these. Like I said, Jetpack will do the WordPress.com one. You can install Google Analyticator. There's a whole myriad of Google Analytic plugins within the repository. And then make sure that you are verifying it's working after 3 days. So after you've got it installed, verify that it's working, and then you can then you can check that one off the list. You got it done. The next mistake is an extremely slow site. This happens all of the time. WordPress site is a dynamic site. And what that means is every page, every post, every page that you go to on your website is being generated by code runs in your web browser, and then it sees special PHP code, which means I have to go fetch information from a database. It goes to the database and finds what it needs, and then brings it back to display on the page. And this could happen up to hundreds of times per website. And so it is very dynamic. So it does each page generates on its own. It's very resource intensive. And so if you're using a shared host like a Bluehost or GoDaddy or Green Geeks or whatever shared hosting company you may be using, it does take a lot of server resources to get that information out. And I've seen websites that take 10, 12, 14 seconds to load individual pages. And so you'll get these long load times without a caching plugin. And what a caching plugin is it is ability to have web browsers and have your server save static data so that you're not always fetching information from the database. And so there's a couple that are out there that work, but the big thing is we want to make sure first that our website is running slowly, and then if it is, then we want to install one of the plugins, and we want to make sure that we've installed it and configured it properly. Otherwise, you're going to make your site even slower. Yes, I've seen people installing the caching plugins, and then it actually slows down their site so slow that you can't even use the website. So the fix is, these are two of my favorite sites here. Tools.pingdom.com and gtmetrics.com. Go to either one of these and then put your domain name in the box. It just says, what is your website address? And then you can click the button and it will go through and it will tell you how fast your page is loading. I'll show you an image here in just a second of what, one of the scores looks like from GTmetrix. And then this is a good baseline to know, hey, is my site running slowly, or, is it doing okay? I would say if you're using shared hosting, if it loads within 2 seconds or so, I would say that you are good to go. If you want higher performance, you're going to be paying more for server space. So if you want that less than a second load time, you're going to want to start, you're probably going to start paying, $50 to $100 per month for a website that runs that quickly. So the first thing we want to do is the plugin of choice. My recommendation is W3 Total Cache. And then once you have that installed, you just can't install it. You actually have to configure it. And there are hundreds of settings in here, which makes it a little bit hard for me to explain. You go through and check all of these settings. But we want to configure it to optimize our site. And there is the metrics on a website that I just did a speed test for earlier. And you can see that it is running a B average, and it loads in about 2.95 seconds. It's on a shared hosting account. It's something that I'm not too worried about, just because that's, it's not a big site of mine. It doesn't get a lot of traffic, but it does give the ability to take a look and get that set up. So you want to, some of the options that you can configure within total caching is you can minify your code, minify CSS and JavaScript. How that works is it basically takes all the spaces, all the line breaks, all of the white space from your file and makes it into one big long, one big long sentence basically. And you have to be careful with some of these because doing that will sometimes break plugins. It's really kind of a trial and error type thing to get W3 Total Cache installed and working very properly on your website. So that one, it's important, but you have to also know that there is going to be some setup and some learning about how to use this particular plugin. Mistake number 6 is not targeting exact keywords. So Google really likes WordPress sites because Google likes fresh content. Google likes to serve up content that's fresh, it's new, and they like websites that constantly are adding new content. They figure that if somebody is updating a website regularly, that they're updating with good content. Now, that's kind of an assumption that's made, but Google knows that WordPress sites are extremely easy to update. So they're going to give a little bit higher preference on people using WordPress just because it's WordPress and it's so much easier to add a page and then instantly have it online. But you need to tell Google what's on each individual page. How it works is we can define what our page title and our metadata description and stuff like that is. We can define that for our sites, but we need to tell each individual page, we have to target a keyword for each individual page, because then that Google knows that, oh, this is new content. If every website has the exact same header information, then more than likely Google's like, well, I've already seen this. I don't need to crawl this entire page and index this and give it a search result ranking. So that's one of the big things. And when a page is optimized, your site will rank higher in search results because Google knows exactly, they don't know exactly, but they know, they have a good idea of what is, what kind of content is on this page as we optimize it for specific things. So the fix for this, and there's lots of plugins out there as well, the one that I recommend highly is WordPress SEO by Yoast. And And I think if you search WordPress SEO, I think that is the name, the quote unquote name for this plugin. But this one is very simple. It's simple and complex all at the same time. You configure a site you do the site-wide default. So basically you say, if I don't define anything, this is the meta description, this is the title that I want to pull up on each individual page. And then you can go in and you can, this is the tedious part, you can optimize each page and post and every piece of content you have so it's optimized for Google. So here's an example of what this looks like on your WordPress page. But basically you pick a keyword. So in this case, the focus keyword is WordPress SEO Plugin. And then it does its little magic and it goes through and sees if you have that exact keyword in the article heading, in the page title, in the page URL, in the content, the meta description, all of these different areas. It looks for, that information. And if it finds it, it's going to say yes, it's going to give you, yes, that's good. So you can see there in that image that the content has 11, WordPress SEO plugin appears 11 times in that post or that page that's being created. And so that's a very powerful, it's almost like a game then. Then you're like, okay, now I've got to get all this keyword in all 5 of these different areas. And then there's another tab up there that's called page analysis, and it'll go through and it's another type of game, and it'll give you a red light, a yellow light, or a green light, whether you've got it yes, no, or almost. And how that works is you go in and it'll say like, oh, you don't have enough, there's not enough copy in this page, or it's written in too complex of a language, or you don't have enough words, or all of these different things. It's really going to help you take some of the things that Google looks for in their website and or when they're serving up search results and really optimizing each page and post. So it's simple to talk about, it's very complex to do, and it's very hard to do if you have hundreds and hundreds of posts that you have to go back and do this for each and every one. That's why you set up the site-wide defaults first, and then you can get to them when you get to them. So if if it's a year till you can get and optimize all of your SEO pages or all the page and posts on your site, then that's okay. But that is the fix. That is how to make your search engine rankings much, much higher. And of course, this plugin, just like the last one, the caching one, there are a lot of settings. Some of the defaults will be perfect. Other ones that we have to go in and kind of mess with and tweak with. And again, don't have time to go into all of that depth right here. But yeah, that was mistake number 6. Mistake number 7 is not collecting email addresses. I see this happening so many times, and it doesn't matter if you don't think you're ever going to use it. The money is in the list, and that's what every internet marketer says. I'm not going to say that I'm an internet marketer, but email is the best way to communicate with your audience. I know for a fact that I sent out an email message on Monday of this week with a URL. I think it was Monday. At some point, I sent out an email with a URL specific to sign up for this webinar. And within several hours of me sending out that email message, I probably had 50 to 100 new people sign up for the webinar because I had that direct line of communication to them. If I just sent out a tweet, I might have got 4 or 5 people. So you have that access. People these days are always checking their email. They're always seeing what's going on in their email. So it's best to collect their email addresses. Like I said, it is it's a direct way to communicate with your fans. And the best way to do this is automate this with a service like MailChimp. There's Aweber, there's Constant Contact, there's tons of these out there as well. But basically what we can do is we can set up an area on our website where it just asks for their name and their email address, and then that information is sent over to MailChimp. And then you send all communication out through MailChimp. Gone are the days of, okay, I'm going to capture this email address and then add it to an Excel file, and then, okay, I'm going to copy and paste all of these emails into the BCC field of an email and then send it out. That is not the proper way to do it. The best way to do it is to use some sort of service. MailChimp is perfect because you can send up to, I believe you can send up to 2,000 messages per month, or you can have, I guess you can have up to 2,000 people on your list, and you can send up to 6,000 or 12,000 messages to that list on a monthly basis, all completely free. So that is really, really powerful. So how we do this, we want to go over to MailChimp.com, sign up for a free account, and you can get started, like I said, for complete free. You can create a list inside of MailChimp. And so you'd say maybe a newsletter list, or if you had a stay updated list, you might want to have 2 different lists. Like a newsletter list would go out and share newsletter type information, once a month updates, weekly updates, or you can have a, subscribe to my newsletter or subscribe to my content type of a list where people will automatically email people any brand new post that you create. So that's another powerful way to use MailChimp. Once you have MailChimp set up, you can install a MailChimp plugin. Again, there's a dozen of these that are out there, and then you link your MailChimp plugin with your MailChimp account, and you can add the plugin. You can drag that to your widgets area on your sidebar, and then the best way to encourage people to sign up is actually create a freebie just to give away. So like on yourwebsiteengineer.com, I give away a free, the top 10 plugins to use ebook that I created. And so I just direct people to there, and that's a little incentive that, hey, if you give me your email address, I'll give you something free and valuable in return. So I think that's very, very valuable. So that's mistake number 7. Mistake number 8 is not staying updated. Wow, didn't realize that was going to be the effect there. Not staying updated. Let's see, can I go back? You can see on this page before it leaves that there's all of these yellow areas across your site. WordPress, how that works is it will notify you every time that WordPress updates, every time a plugin updates, every time a theme updates. And so you want to make sure that you're staying on top of these things. I log into so many people's websites, and they're running like 3 versions old of WordPress, and they've got 16 different plugins that need updated. The big thing is every update not necessarily adds new features to your website or features to that plugin or that theme or that WordPress install, but it fixes security holes. So they find things that people are hacking into sites. They go ahead and fix them, and once they're fixed, you want to update them so people can't hack into your site. They can't attack you. So that's the main reason for staying updated. How you do this is you first create a backup to restore point. So there's plugins out there like the BackWP Up free plugin I talked about. What you do is before I do any upgrades or anything like that, I go and do a one-click backup. So there's a button that you say, I want to back up before I do anything. And then I'll update WordPress first. That's the first main core thing. We want to do that first. And then I'll start updating plugins and themes as necessary. So themes rarely get updated, but plugins will get updated maybe once a month, maybe once every other week. Depends on the plugin, depends on how, how many users they have, how many features they're adding, things like that. So we want to make sure that we're creating that backup point just in case there was a big thing that happened when people updated from WordPress 3.3 to WordPress 3.4 that broke a lot of plugins, and that was because of people were building themes and plugins improperly. So we want to make sure that probably won't happen again, but that was a big thing. If you didn't have a restore point, then you had to go and manually try to restore and get an older version installed, and it's just kind of a pain and a headache. Problem number 9, or mistake number 9, is a lot of people install bad plugins. There's I think at this point there's over 26,000 plugins in the WordPress repository. Some of them good, some of them really bad. Like this one. It's called WPSM Piston Sliding Menu, and I have no idea what it does, and it was just an example bad one that I found. So the area that we want to highlight on when you're looking for WordPress plugins is that area in red that's highlighted in the red box. So you want to look and make sure, 2 of the big things I always look for is last updated. So this one was last updated in 2011. So it's been almost 2 years since that's been updated, and the download numbers are very small. Now that's not a big thing, like the downloads isn't a deal breaker for me, but I noticed that, okay, there's only been 300 and some downloads. This might not be the plugin for me. You can install this and try it, but most of the time, if it doesn't work, you want to make sure that you're getting rid of these plugins that do not work. Now, here's an example of one that actually, is different. This is called Contact Form 7. And we'll talk about this plugin a little bit later here in the presentation, but see how much different it is. So it's got a big header image. It's called a header graphic. It shows that it's compatible up to 3.5 or higher. It works in 3.6. It was last updated in August, or at least when the screenshot was taken, it was uploaded, or it was last updated in August of 2013, which was very recent, and it's been downloaded more than 12 million times and has 1,400 5-star reviews, which is phenomenal. So that's a great indicator of looking, finding a plugin that really works. And this takes a little bit of time and effort and energy to find really good ones, but here are some things that you can look for when you are looking to install a plugin. So first you want to look for a plugin that have a cover image. That is that large image that goes across the top. This is a new thing within WordPress within the last year or year and a half. And so if a plugin hasn't been updated since then, more than likely it will not have that cover image. You also want to make sure that it's been updated recently. And I say recently, I normally do with the last 6 to 8 months. Obviously more recent is better, but if they've been updated in the last 6 months, they're usually probably pretty good. And then you look for lots of downloads as well. And again, in quotes is lots because it really depends. Like my plugin that I recently created has 145 downloads or something like that. It's only been out for a few months, but I know that it works well. I'm going to go ahead and use that. And of course, I created the cover art image so that people know that, hey, this is a legitimate plugin. Mistake number 10, using huge, poorly named pictures. And so lots of people do this, and I don't blame them. It's the easiest way to get pictures up onto your website, but you basically upload a full-size image from your camera. So say you went on vacation, you uploaded this picture that is, thousands of pixels by thousands of pixels. It's 4 megabytes in size. It takes up a lot of space, and it's way too big to display properly on a website. It's going to take up an entire 27-inch monitor. So WordPress actually has to work to compress the image to get it to look halfway decent on your website. And again, that's taking resources and memory and slowing your site down to an extent. You also want to create a title. You want to call that title something more than boring.jpg, and you want to include alt text, and I'll get that in just a second. So how to fix these things is we want to resize images before uploading, even if you don't right size them. So maybe you're not exactly sure how big of an image that you need, but if you resize them so at least one of the sides is less than 800 pixels, that is going to be much, much better than uploading an image that is 4,000 pixels. And of course, it'll take less time to upload. Your web page will load faster. There's lots of benefits. It's going to look much better. Like when you upload a big image and WordPress has to compress it into a smaller image, then it'll actually look pixelated on the screen. It won't look good on your website. You also want to give images a descriptive name, and you also want to fill out the alt text. And this basically is so Google and screen readers know what type of content is being displayed. So if you have an image of a guy playing baseball, you would want to say in the alt text, baseball player, or grounding a fly ball, or fielding a ground ball, or whatever that may be. You want to include that so Google knows what's going on. And a screen reader, if somebody is visually impaired, they can at least see, okay, is this image, what is this image? And it kind of draw context to what's going on that page. Because Google right now cannot search images yet. I don't know if they'll ever be able to, but this is our best way of giving that information to Google so they can index your site well. Another thing to do is, I don't have a point for this, but you can go to, I believe it's, look for the program GIMP, and I think it's at gimp.org, GIMP.org, and that's a free tool that you can download, and you can resize your images. You can resize them to the correct size and things like that. So that will save you, that will get those images so they're smaller, and that works both on Mac and PC. Mistake number 11, we're getting close to the end here, is your content isn't shareable. So remember, people will share content if it's great content. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you're creating awesome content that people can't live without. Just great content, a great blog post, an awesome podcast episode, videos. If it's good, like, people will share it. The other thing is we want to make sure that it's easy to share. So if there's no buttons, if there's no encouragement to share, one of the biggest things that I see is people will embed tweets, or they'll say, hey, if you really like this, click here to embed, tweet out about this. So kind of like I did with DustinIsLive.com, I could put that inside a blog post and say, hey, if you really enjoy this point, click here, and it will automatically populate a tweet for you. And if you get people sharing your stuff, they're talking about what you're creating, that's going to bring more traffic to your site. And of course, more traffic is always better. It will, help bring sales in. It'll help do all kinds of different things with more traffic on your website. So those are some things. The big thing is we want to make sure that it is easily able to be shared. So the easiest way to do this is to install the Jetpack plugin. We talked about that back in mistake number 1 or number 2, or one of them, to get started with That was to get the start tracking your site to see how many people are coming to it. There's also a module inside the Jetpack plugin that's called sharing. I believe it's just called the sharing feature. Another thing that you can do is you can install one of thousands of other social plugins that are out there. So the example screenshot there is of the Jetpack sharing plugin, and you can basically customize this and say that I just want Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, and LinkedIn. Or if you want all of them like there is here, you can add that as well. So it's very customizable, it's very easy, and it automatically appears at the bottom of every single post. Mistake number 12 is you're not using the power of 24/7. And what I mean is your website is always up and running. Well, barring any server outages or, like maintenance issues or things like that. But in general, your website is up and running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you have a business, this is an awesome thing. It's a very powerful thing. If you have items to sell, like this is powerful. Like add them to your site. It's pretty simple to get up and running with a very basic store online. Doesn't take a lot of configuring, and it's really not too painful. We'll talk about that in just a second. And you also want to make sure that things are extremely automated on your website. So you want to make sure that, say people are signing up for their free ebook. They want it now. Like you want to make sure that everything is immediate. Whenever people sign up and they give you something or they expect something in return, make sure that it comes back, immediately. That's one of the powers of being 24/7. If somebody signs up for a class of mine, or they sign up to, get my free ebook, like immediately they get it. It's just how it works. And that's using the power of 24/7. Like if I'm sleeping, I want them to get the valuable information. So maybe someday, they'll come to me, they'll hire me, they'll do different things. So how we fix these things, if you want to sell items, the best and fastest, easiest way is to go and add the WooCommerce plugin. This one is very easy to use. It gives you a whole shopping cart experience. You can set up a PayPal account, and then you can accept payments with PayPal. So within the WooCommerce screen, you can use the payment gateway PayPal. You basically just put your email address in. It works just like that. And then when people go to click pay after they have things in their shopping cart within WooCommerce, it will take you to a PayPal page. They can pay, and then it brings them back to your site. It's not the most elegant version of, it's not the most elegant way to make sales, but it is the fastest way to get up and running. If you want to, people want instant gratification. So if you offer a free book, if you offer anything, make sure that it can be downloaded, consumable, whatever it is, instantly. That's another really big thing. And mistake number 13 is not using a contact form. So this one I see overlooked a lot. People are like, oh, well, they can just use my email address there. But you want to make it as easy as possible for people to contact you. And the best way to do this is have a dedicated page called Contact. I've seen this so many times. Like when I look for a page, when I want contact information, I'm looking for the word contact. I'm not looking for hear from us or we want to hear from you. All of these different things. Make it simple for people to find the information they're looking for. And then we can install 2 different plugins to do this. Contact Form 7 is that free plugin that had over 12 million downloads that we talked about just a little bit ago. Or you can use a premium service called Gravity Forms. This costs about $39 per website. Totally worth the money, and it's a drag and drop interface for you to create a web form. If you want to see what one looks like, you can go to yourwebsiteengineer.com/contact, and that has all of my information. Like I've customized that form using Gravity Forms. And when you create your form, make sure it's simple. You just need name, email, or maybe phone number if you want a phone number, and a message box. There's no need for a subject line. Most people are like, I don't know what to even put in a subject line. You don't need, try to make it as simple as possible and try to require as few fields as possible. That just makes the barrier to entry much, much lower. And then of course you want to make sure once you install this that it's verify that it's working. A lot of times, I'll set up a plugin, teach somebody how to use it, and then like a month later, they're like, I don't know if I'm getting anything. It doesn't appear to be working. And you want to make sure that it is indeed working. So to recap, let's go through these really, really quickly. Mistake number 1 is not removing the initial settings. We want to make sure that we're doing that. We want to make sure that we have a backup. We need a backup of our website. So in case crazy things happen, we want to make sure that our site is not vulnerable to hackers by using the better WP security. And we want to start tracking our visitors with either Google Analytics or with the Jetpack plugin. Mistake number 5, 6, and 7, and 8 are you'll have a slow loading website. We're not targeting keywords. If we're not capturing our email addresses or our website is outdated, we're doing it wrong. We need all of those things. And lastly, the last 5 mistakes is we've installed bad plugins. We don't want to do that. We've installed too large of images. The content isn't shareable. We're not using the power of 24/7 being on all the time. and we don't have a contact form. So that's the recap. I hope that you found value in all of these things, and you can see that there's probably 1, 2, maybe even 10 of these that you could install or start implementing today. Even later, when you get the recap, when you get all of these slides, you can go through step by step and start knocking some of these things out. But I do want to offer a special offer in any webinar that I do. I don't always have special offers at the end, but I feel that like this one lines up perfectly with what I'm about to tell you, this webinar and the special offer with this brand new course that I've created. And it's called Conquer Your Website, and you may have looked at Conquer Your Website as we went through this, but I'm doing a special 3-day VIP launch where you get step-by-step instructions to get your site performing at its best. It's all video, 20 to 30-minute videos just like this, but instead of just presentations like we did today, I go in and I do videos. And so if you go and look at any of the videos over at conqueryourwebsite.com, there's like a 3-part video series. It's all like that. I go in, I show you exactly, here's the button to check, here's the things that you need to do. So in this modules, the modules are very similar to the 13 things that we learned today. So it teaches you about backing up, protecting your site from hackers, setting up analytics, speeding up our sites. It talks about how to optimize for Google. We learned just a little bit of code, how to make some custom tweaks to a website with a little CSS and HTML. We learn how to keep WordPress updated, how to set up MailChimp, and that goes through all of the processes of setting up MailChimp, sending out your first thing. It talks about how to automatically send a free ebook when somebody signs up. A very powerful presentation or a module there. It talks about the must-have WordPress plugins. We talk about images, how we can resize them. I show you exactly how to resize them, how to share with social media, how to sell content online. This is one of the big things. There's several different ways that you can sell online, and I show you 2 ways. If you don't like the WooCommerce way we talked about, there's another way called eJunkie. I go through the step-by-step details on how I actually sell some of my courses completely through eJunkie. It's super simple, and you can get started today. So as part of the VIP launch, these bonuses that I want to let you know about, I'm having 6 1-hour question and answer webinars as part of this. I'm also doing the ability, all of the plugins that have the ability to import settings. I've downloaded my settings and given them to you. So you can go and you can easily install the W3 Total Cache, WordPress SEO by Yoast. You get all of those settings to just automatically import to your site, and you don't have to worry about checking all those boxes and things like that. And also, anyone that signs up before Monday night, next Monday at 11:59 Eastern Time, I will give you a 30-minute free consultation with me. I'll answer any questions. I'll look at your site. I will, break down anything that you need, help you personal one-on-one type coaching. So I'm really excited to give that away. That is a limited time only. I cannot do that for everyone because my time is very valuable. Now, in this training, I show you everything. I give it step by step. It's like you're looking over my shoulder. You see everything, and you don't have to waste time searching all over the web. How do you set up this plugin? How do you do this? How do I get my website running? Like, that is my goal. And you're probably thinking, okay, how much is this? You can hire a developer at $100 per hour is an approximate range for people like me. Pay them 10 to 12 hours to do what they want. You have to communicate with them, everything that you need them to do. Or you can spend, hours of researching, trying to figure out exactly what you're looking for on the web. But my goal is I just want you to save time, money, and frustration. So if you want to be able to, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you're interested in doing these things yourself, I'm really excited that I can share these 12 step-by-step modules with you. 3 more slides, and I'll have it all wrapped up. Over 4 hours of video content. It's wrapped into very, very small chunks. So you can watch 20 minutes here, 20 minutes here. You can take it all of it with you, and you get all of my settings. And it's just $297, and I have 2 great payment options. So if you don't want to pay that full chunk, you can get started for as low as $29 today. So if you're interested, you can go to conqueryourwebsite.com/VIP. And now I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I know that questions have been pouring in throughout the course of the webinar. I'll go ahead and answer all of those now, and yeah, we'll get with it. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type those into the chat room, and I'm going to go ahead and see if I can pull these things up. So let's see. Brian asked a question very early on. And did you get your own? He says, why does WordPress use a default permalink setting if it's basically useless? I have no idea. That's one thing that I wish I knew. I wish it was very simple, and I wish that it automatically came like that. It's just goofy. Sometimes what happens is, in order for it to do the rewrite structure like that, it actually is creating a brand new hidden file on your server. So I don't know if like the base WordPress install can't do that or what, but occasionally, like sometimes these things will break. Sometimes you'll go to a web page and it'll say this cannot be displayed. You just have to go to the permalink section and click regenerate permalink, or click on post name again and hit go, and it regenerates that file, that visible file on your server. And so I don't know, like I wish it was like that. Otherwise it'd be so much easier to just tell people like, it's automatically set up the right way. Robert asks, is there any files in the root directory I should delete after a fresh install of WordPress? Not necessarily. There's not really anything that you have to delete. A lot of the better WP security things that are there, like they will actually lock down the files and make them unopenable. And so those are a good thing. So you could delete, I think there might be a wp-config-sample.php that you could probably remove. There's just a handful of, like there's an index or a readme.html that could be removed. It's not really hurting anything. And it's not like a static HTML file or a text file that are there that you could remove. It's not, there's no ability for it to go and inject any code on static files like that. So I wouldn't be concerned with that at all, Robert. Great question. So only install W3 total cache if the site is 3 seconds or slower, Brian asks. That's kind of a good recommendation. You'll again want to try that. It all depends on your server, depends on your hosting company. It depends on a lot of things. But if you're, if you're on a site that's not mission critical, I'm going to say, so if you're, if it's a blog or a website, that's just, for either entertainment value or you're creating a great resource, but it's not going to be mission critical that people are purchasing things. So, the longer it takes for somebody to go through a checkout process, the longer, the more likely it is that they won't finish it all the way. So like Amazon actually tracks this, and they can figure out that if their server takes more, if their server load time, their page load time goes up by like 10%, which is still less than a second, like that cuts the number of sales down tremendously. So if you're interested, if you're trying to sell things on your site, you want to make that as fast and efficient as possible. But if you're more along the lines of here's free information, it's a kind of an information-based site, 2 to 3 seconds, I wouldn't worry about hassling with the W3 total cache. Mary Ann says, maybe you could do a webinar sometime on how to use WordPress SEO by Yoast. Yes, that would be a great webinar that I bet I could spend at least an hour just going through like all of the different settings, how it works, how to configure it on a page and post basis. That's a great idea, Mary Ann. Thanks. Michael asks, do you recommend W3 total cache for new WordPress users? And do you install it for all of your clients? My concern is that sometimes caching plugins can cause troubles, but when they work, they're great. Yeah, it depends. I always install it on my sites, in the ones I work on, just because like I want that performance. Like I don't want one of my clients to say, well, you created this awesome site, but it takes forever to load. So I always do that. And for the most part, if you're where caching plugins break and how this works is it actually is taking all of your content and data and making it static. And when it's doing that, like if you update a plugin or you do different things, like you're not going to see those changes because all of your dynamic code is now become static. So like every time that you update code, every time that you make a change to a plugin, you have to go and you have to what's called flush the cache. You have to just get rid of everything that's stored in cache. And so that could be a little confusing for brand new WordPress users. But I do install it for my own sites. Most of the time, the clients that I'm working with, they don't go in and, they're not doing major things. I normally have to go in and make the WordPress updates for them just because that's part of, making sure that their website is up and running and working properly. That's a great question. Brian says, is Yoast a free plugin? Yes, it is. It is a free plugin of sorts. Let's see what else. Brian has another question. For plugins, what is a satisfactory last updated time frame? Like I said, it was, I think you see that you updated the plugin. That's normally a 6 to 8 month window, sometimes a year, but for the most part, like if it's an active developer, they are adding more, they're always adding new features, they're updating things, they're making sure that their code works properly. What about scaling the images within WordPress? It can be done, and the thing is, a lot of WordPress themes will do a great job of, there's a script out there that's called the Tim Thumb script. And you don't need to know what that is or how it works, but basically it takes an image and it resizes it. So if you have like this giant image, but it's a very like long and narrow image that it's displaying on your website, then it's going to try to figure out where to crop it. And when it scales it and crops it, like you could get like the middle of a person instead of their head, or you could get, you know, something that you don't necessarily want, you know, a part of the picture. So the best is to kind of crop it close before you upload it. So then when it resizes and makes it dynamic, you know, like creates the image, then it's going to, you know, look much, much better. I had an experience, like I uploaded a WordPress logo one time and it resized it so you couldn't even see what it was. And it's like, well, this isn't anything, you know, like that's not what I want. So I'm really particular for me. I want to control what those images look like. So that's how the scaling works within WordPress. Which Marianne says, which social sharing plugin do you recommend? Any drawback to using the Jetpack one? I haven't had any problems with using Jetpack plugins because there's like 25, 26 different modules within Jetpack, and you just have to turn the ones on that you actually want to use. Like if you're using all of them, it may slow your site down just a little bit, but I haven't seen any real issues with using. I like just the cleanliness look of what that one looks like. If we go back and take a look at it, what I really, really like is it's just clean and simple, and all the icons look the same. You know, some of those plugins that are out there, they have like, okay, here's the official Twitter one, here's the official Facebook one, and they don't line up right, and they've got their pluses all over. So another really good one, I believe, is called the Shareaholic sharing plugin, and that does a pretty decent job of, it just uses the icons. Another thing that you can build right in, like you don't necessarily have to, you know, have these. You can just display these icons. If you display the icons, it's really just going to display, you know, give the people the ability to click and connect with you on a social media channel. So it's probably recommended to use some sort of plugin so it's got some smarts. Like here, if we click on the Twitter icon, it's probably going to pull up Twitter, and it will probably pull in like the title of the post and then the Twitter name of the person that wrote it. You know, those are all configurable within, this is all configurable within the Jetpack plugin. So that's what I really like about that one. Brian says, how do you use the Dustin is Live auto tweet? That is a secret that I'm not sure. No, I'm actually creating a video on how to do this. It's actually really, really simple. I bought the domain, dustinislive.com, and then I'm using a service called clicktotweet.com. And so if you go to clicktotweet.com, you can go and you can fill out whatever tweet that you want it to say. You can type in all the information, whatnot. And then when you click submit or go or generate, I think the button says generate, then it will generate a click-to-tweet.com and then like 6 or 8 characters. Then you just take that URL and then redirect the domain name. So within hover.com, where I purchase all my domain names, I just went in and said, when anyone types in dustinislive.com, just redirect them to clicktotweet.com / you know, a handful of letters. So that's how I did that. I've got a video that I'm working on that I will have out probably next week that will show exactly how that's done. Does WooCommerce allow for digital downloads? I am a photographer wanting to sell photos. Yes, you can say that within those settings within WooCommerce, you can set it up to say this is a digital product. And so with a digital product, you don't have to say like how many, you don't have to have inventory. So you don't have to say, oh, I have a quantity of 7 digital ebooks. Well, that's dumb. But you have the ability to go in and say that when somebody purchases it, it automatically downloads, or when somebody purchases it sends them a receipt with a link to the image, or there's different ways that you can configure that. So yes, you can do digital stuff like that. If you remember if you signed up last month, I did a live question and answer like classroom setting. Instead of a free webinar, I did one, and I was using the WooCommerce plugin, and basically I was just selling quote unquote a digital seat, and then I had it set up to when it sold, like I don't remember exactly how it worked, but like I could have set it up so they could go to a specific link and download their files, or I could email them the files. Probably the easiest way is to upload those images, those photos onto a server somewhere, Brian, and then take that URL and then send that as a receipt from that digital product itself. It's all set up within WooCommerce. It's pretty simple. Nice presentation. Thank you. Robert asks, should I change the default URL /WP admin, and how can I do that? You can do that with the Better WP plugin, Better WP security plugin. There's an area where you can change the 3 most logged in pages. So like you can change what wp-login.php goes to. You could just call it login. You could call it my secret login. You can do, or maybe that one doesn't include wp-admin. But I think you have the settings there on those pages to go and make some changes like that. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. Michael says, has anyone told you that you look like Tobey Maguire? No, nobody has told me that I look like Tobey Maguire, but that is, I guess that's a good thing. I would say yes, no. Thanks, Mike. Any recommendations on applying those corrections to a mobile site? What's the best way to add mobile site to my WordPress site? Thanks, Art. The best way to do mobile from a WordPress site is to have one in the same. So you want to make sure that your website is, they call it mobile responsive, or it's responsive ready. So that means it responds to the size of the device that it's on. And then that way you're only managing one thing. If you're managing, a WordPress site that's got a mobile theme on it and a WordPress site that has a standard computer theme on it, now you're managing two things. When you get comments on one, you got to import them to the other. When you post something, you got to post it on the other. It's kind of a big pain. And so that's the best way. And then that way you're optimizing one thing. You've got your search engine rankings, are all built on, the same exact thing. And so that's probably the best way. If you wanted to get started, like there's free themes out there within WordPress, or there's ones at Woo Themes or themeforest.net, all these different places where you can go and purchase a responsive theme, and you can just change the whole look and feel of your site, and then it will be a mobile ready site as well. So that's a good question, Art. O'Brien says, scaling from within the media manager. Yeah, you can do that when it comes to your images. You can scale them within the media manager, but I've just found that sometimes, your web browser may time out. It may, you're still using your server resources to do all of that work. Like somewhere, like I would rather be doing that on my computer rather than slowing down my website, because it's resizing an image that I can do on my computer that's not going to affect the web. And it's a little bit faster, I think, if you do it on your own computer. Brad says, should images be sized to square and not landscape or portrait? And it really depends. It depends exactly on what you're doing, where it goes. It's not, it honestly depends. Like, so I know for a fact, like on my website, if you go to yourwebsiteengineer.com, on the homepage, you can see that there's these little images that appear to the left. And then I've got the description and the play button and stuff like that. And I know that that specific image, that particular image, is 148 pixels wide by 78 pixels tall. And so whenever I'm creating a new image for that particular spot, I am going out and I am, creating that size. So I know that that's the size I need. At the top of a blog post, so if you click on and go to one of the pages that have one of the pages that has the show notes for one of the podcast episodes, that's 566 by 133. Like, I just know that, and that's the size that I create. So the best way is, it depends on your theme. So if your theme is displaying square images, I would definitely be starting to crop square images. If it's if they're landscape or they're portrait, I would start cropping them very similar to the way that your theme is displaying them. Good question, Brad. Joey says, it's not a question, but Jetpack also has a module for a contact form. Quite easy to set up, and it works fine. Yes, I forgot about that. That is built right in. So three of the mistakes today you can fix by installing the Jetpack plugin, and it does a lot more things. There's a photon. I could have included that in the site loading slowly. If you enable photon within Jetpack, that will actually serve your images from a CDN, a content delivery network. It's completely free, all paid for by the fine folks over at Automatic or WordPress.com, and that will speed up your website as well. So that's really valuable. That's a great suggestion. Thanks, Joey. Don says, when you activate the sharing with Jetpack, does it apply to your posts, or is it on from that point? It applies to everything. And I believe you have the ability to control whether it shows up on just posts or just pages or all posts and all pages. But yeah, it's going to go onto every post. You don't have to go back in and configure it on every single page or post. So that's a real benefit when you get started. Roby says, +1 to the Tobey Maguire lookalike. Yes, it's a good thing. Thanks, guys. Ren says, I started using the Better WP security plugin after you featured it on your podcast and can definitely recommend it. I used to edit the HT access file, but this is much more effective. Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, that is a good point. You could go and you could manually hand code all of this stuff, but it's all built in. You click, 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 and it's done. It's really cool. And I should have mentioned that there is a backup feature built into Better WP security as well. So if you just wanted to install that one, I don't know if it has the ability to schedule it, but you can, before you get started, you can can install, you can run a backup on your database before you really get going. So awesome. Robert says, thanks so much, Dustin. Understood. Thanks. Any example sites that we can look to observe these corrections? Well done. Thanks, Art. I mean, when I set up conqueryourwebsite.com, I went through all of these things. So basically, as I was teaching the course, as I was filming each one of the modules, I was actually doing it live for the course, so that so you can go there and take a look. It's really hard because there's not a lot of content there, but I've installed the caching plugins necessary. I have search engine optimized each individual page, but it's really kind of hard to showcase all of those things without really seeing the back end. So you almost need to take a look at the back end so you can see, oh, this is how, I've optimized this post, or this is how I have my backup set, or things like that. So that's pretty hard. That is a good question though, Art. Maybe I could create like a demo site that's got all of the stuff kind of like with general dummy data and see how that works. That's a kind of a neat idea. Another thing is Valerie Drop does a great job resizing pictures. Just drag and drop. You can set desired image size and do them in batches. Okay. Is that a website of is it like valeriedrop.com, or can you give us just a little bit more information there? Dawn says, will you give us a printout of question and answers? So you want to print out of the questions that I talked about on this webinar, or the questions that were addressed in the Conquer Your Website question and answer webinars? Dawn, if you could answer that, I can answer it. Any other questions? Say it's not a standalone Mind program. It's a standalone Mind program, and it's free. Tom Yu says so that is Valerie Drop. So if you're interested in Valerie Drop, Google that, and I'm sure that you can download that. It's probably a great resource like GIMP, or you can use Photoshop. I use Acorn. It's a program on the Mac. It's a very lightweight type Photoshop. Pixelmator is another one on the Mac. Worst case, you could use Microsoft Paint if you had to, like if you wanted to. There's lots of options out there, but it's just, you can use iPhoto. You can use anything that's going to take it from a gigantic image, a 4,000, anything that you pull specific off your digital camera is going to be much too big, or much bigger than it really needs to be. Valerie Drop, one word. Varied drop. Varied drop. VARIEDROP. Varied drop. Yeah, Dawn replies, to save time so we can re-listen and pauses to get from today's webinar. You've already given so much great information. Thanks. Yeah, you'll get all the points. You'll get the entire slideshow. I'll try to see and I normally include some of the questions that were answered. Probably, I don't know if I'll do that or not. That's varied drop. Varied drop is what it is. Yes, no, maybe. I don't know. I'll have to see. I'll have to see how long it takes to process this whole thing. Good question, though. Another question comes in. What is the maximum kilobit size of an example for 100K? I do not know that off the top of my head. I would say, if you're uploading an image that is, I would say you keep it under, 1 megabyte, that's going to be significant. A digital camera image, is normally 3 to 4 megabytes. But keep them, it's really hard to say. I don't know what is the maximum kilobyte size of an image. So just keep, the audio portion is I'm keeping everything. So as we continue to record, all of this is being recorded. So I'm not necessarily going to type out all the questions so you can see, but you will get all of this until I say goodbye. Is there any more questions? It looks like I've kind of answered a lot of them. Thanks you guys so much for tuning in and hanging out today, whatever time it may be in your time zone. I'm excited to continue to bring you this great free information. I'm not sure what November is going to bring. I know that I've got it on my calendar for November 1st. The first Friday there is when I will do another webinar. If you have any suggestions, go ahead. You can send them to dustin@yourwebsiteengineer.com, and I will gladly take those into consideration. If something that you want to learn, maybe we'll do a whole episode on the WordPress SEO by Yoast. That could be a fun one. yeah, that's going to, I think, wrap it up. No more questions are coming in. So thank you guys so much. And I will go ahead and I will process this. This section it'll probably take an hour or two for the whole video and me to get that all done. And then I will send it out via email. You'll get an email with it later today, and you'll have access to all of it. You can download it, you can use it however you like, and you can start, implementing these things for yourself. That's the big goal. Like, you don't have to go out and buy a course to do it. Like, I just want to make sure that you're not doing these 13 mistakes. But if you'd like to buy the course, I would greatly appreciate it, and you'll learn a lot, and you'll have that one-on-one interaction with me as well. So with that, I am going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for, another question is, how do you schedule the 6 one-hour webinars and the 30-minute consultations? Those will be scheduled. The first one is actually on Tuesday of next week, so that's why the Monday is the deadline. And then I will have a schedule of those, and they'll be varying of times, because I know that there's people on different there's people in different time zones like there is today. So some of them may be in the morning, some of them may be in the afternoon, some may be in the evening. They're all video recorded, and you can submit questions beforehand. I'll answer those as part of that. So it's all recorded. You'll get to see it. Next one, will you break up the 12 videos in case we don't need all of the info but need certain ones? I haven't thought of that. It depends. Let me think about that, and maybe I can do that. I might be able to do that. It's just a technical ability for me to be able to split them into different areas. I have to think through that just a little bit. And at least I don't have the schedule quite yet done, but it'll be probably Tuesday will be the first one, and then they'll be weekly, and then the 30-minute consultations, those will be on a case-by-case basis. With people that sign up by Monday, like once Monday night comes, then I will start sending out emails with, here are available times that I'm available. Then you click and you sign up for one, and then that's how that's going to work. And Brian says, yes, there is, or he asked, is there a monthly payment option for the VIP webinar? Yes, there is. And remember, it's more than a webinar. Like, it's 12 mini webinars in one, but there is a monthly payment option. You get started for $29, or if you wanted 4 monthly payments of $79 or $297. So it's all kind of automated. If you go to conqueryourwebsite.com/VIP, you can sign up, and it will automatically, you'll get an email. Like I said, automated is the best way. So within a few minutes after you sign up, you will get an email that will have all of the login information. You could actually start watching before I even turn my recording software off if you needed to. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and hanging out. And again, if you are interested in any way on what the next topic should be when it comes to my next webinar, go ahead and email me, Dustin@yourwebsiteengineer.com. All right, I've got a lot to do to get this thing out there for you guys to watch later. And there's hundreds of people who weren't able to attend live, and so I got to make sure that they can get that as well. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll talk again soon. And again, remember, yourwebsiteengineer.com has tons of free information about WordPress. It's all in podcast form for the most part, but go ahead and you can consume a lot of content there. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.